Hey guys, Double J, JArrett. Need to call a timeout real quick here. I wanted to tell your listeners what I've been telling my world listeners for a while now. It's about all the incredible things happening over on adfreeshows.com.
The wait is over, as an all-new Conversations with Conrad is finally here. He created the soundtrack to so many of our childhood memories, with iconic themes like The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Ultimate Warrior, and many more. The legendary Jim Johnston sits down with Conrad for a 2-hour career retrospective. Available now only on adfreeshows.com.
Literally started, I was watching some tape of the guy, and I just started doing this to the kind of what I felt like was the tempo of him running. And then I recorded that. And then just over that, you're just doing. You know, it's so simple, but that's what felt like him.
Hey, that's just a small taste of what Ad Free Shows has waiting for you, including a brand new perk, getting to join in on the live recordings of the shows with 4 levels to choose from. See for yourself why Ad Free Shows is the best value in wrestling today. Sign up now at adfreeshows.com. That's right, sign up today at adfreeshows.com.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, your friend and mine, the greatest professional wrestler of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, Double J, JArrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Connie. How are we doing today, pal?
Better than I deserve, happier than a puppy with 2 Peters.
How about that? You feel like a crosscut saw. Take 2 good men to handle you. That's an old, we got several hillbilly sayings.
Yeah, man.
Huh? You know,
I mean, just hanging out like a hair in a biscuit, you know.
So folks, oh my gosh. As we were chatting, hey, my world listeners, thanks for tuning in. But full disclosure, we're recording this not in our kind of normal time of day or day and date and all that kind of stuff, but we're recording in the afternoon. Most of the time we record in the morning when I'm essentially fresh out of the gym, wake up, do my morning routine, get a good workout in, and I guess still a lot of the adrenaline, but I've been on the phone all afternoon. So my energy level is a little different. So Conrad, you're either going to have to, I don't know, should you smack talk?
Well, hang on. Are you hungry? Because if you are, we need to hang up and get back together later. The peek behind the curtain. The only times Jeff's ever been fit to be tied with me, I didn't figure this out at first, but by the time it happened the second time, I said, now, Jeff, before I respond, have you eat? And he said, I'll do that and I'll call you back. Bye. Because it was like we both acknowledged, okay, that's probably a good idea. And yeah, how about this? It's a good idea to hit subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate you being here. Thanks for listening, but we want you to see what we're doing because we've upped our game a little bit. I think you'll dig it. It's My World on YouTube.com. Of course, we'd love to have your interaction. Maybe you got questions about our show and you'd like, I want to ask Jeff a question. Well, you can. Each and every week, we solicit those questions over on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It's at My World Pod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And every single week, you see Jeff sporting a different piece of merch. It's all available at boxofgimmicks.com right now. Love to have your follows personally as well. You can find Jeff on every social media outlet at Real Jeff Jarrett. I am at Hey, it's Conrad. And we are excited to be here today because, well, it's the heels of WrestleMania. Now, of course, we're recording it before WrestleMania, so we'll probably have some reactions to that next week. But what you need to be paying attention to is tomorrow night. AEW returns to Long Island. And I have it on good authority. This is the show they put the world title on you, Jeff. Have you heard that rumor?
I haven't. Well, is that innuendo or rumor and innuendo? Or,
well, listen, I said to myself,
yeah,
this report that Jeff Jarrett turned down the opportunity to take the belt off of Orange Cassidy has to be because he said to himself, I didn't come all this way to only come this way. I'm not going to be the doggone assistant manager again. I'm getting the big belt.
Would
I'm
you-
getting the big platinum. I'm getting the big daddy. MJF, you better look out, son. You're like a new school heel. We're going to show you what an old school heel can
I
do.
would
What's
love
happening?
to- yeah.
You're going to beat him in Long Island. I know it. I'm speaking it into existence.
I love that, Conrad, but you're, as you say, man, that's a lot to unpack there. You just went through really quick, but
I mean, listen, boys and girls, set your DVR tomorrow night. Dynamite, Long Island, MJF drops the belt to a true heel, the last outlaw, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. And I know MJF's going to demand an immediate rematch this Friday because there's a Rampage and a Battle of the Belts in Kingston. You guys have shows coming up in Milwaukee, Pittsburgh, Sunrise, Florida. And there's even more house shows being announced in Corbin, Kentucky, and Salem, Virginia. Tickets are on sale now at AEWTIX.com. The Last Outlaw is coming to your town, and he's bringing a guitar that you don't want no part of. So come see him live and in person, MJF.
House Rules is off and running again, like you just said, Corbin and Salem. But yeah, man, what a schedule we have coming up. Gosh, Conrad, we've talked offline about that, but we've got a lot of cool events. Top Guy, but Canada, Calgary, we talked about that last week. Toronto, Hamilton, we like the Canadian tour. We're all over the place.
Hey, let me just say this too. You know, I got friends in the wrestling business. Did you know that, Jeff?
Conrad, I am. I'll tell you a story offline about a production guy come up and said, "You know your partner Conrad?" I said, "Yeah, I know my partner Conrad. What do you?" And then he went into a store. Anyway, yeah, you have connections everywhere.
Well, so I wanted to say, I don't want to put you in a bad spot here.
Okay.
But I've been told, and I have it on good authority. I don't want you to comment. I don't want you to get in any trouble. I'm just trying to give, as some of your friends say, the Iggy to our listeners that
You're unbelievable.
might be something special coming your way. Don't say nothing, Jeff. Don't say nothing.
I am absolutely not gonna.
But hypothetically, watch the damn show. Pay special damn attention. It's coming your way.
How about that?
I'm excited about it.
I am too, Conrad. I really, all kidding aside, who would have thunk the year of 2023 to 2022 is crazy enough. We've gone down that rabbit hole plenty of times with 2023. I really am. I am super excited about it for a multitude of reasons. We touched on WrestleQuest last week. That comes out in May. The numbers off PAX and all the data and research and all the wish list and all that kind of stuff. It's booming. Springfield Lucky Horseshoes. Our friend. It's going to be, I may be letting the cat out of the bag, but I guess
here we go. Do it.
I'm part of the group, so I guess we can. But the leader, I guess you could say the leader,
but founder, the creator.
That's sorry, I apologize. Eazy-E, the creator and founder of the NWO,
and Nitro,
will be a part of the Springfield Lucky Horseshoes opening day festivities, ceremonies, and all that kind of stuff. Wednesday, May 31st, and Wednesday is the key day here. That's why the Last Outlaw will not be in Springfield. But yes, Eric is graciously accepted the offer. He's excited about it. We talked about travel, and so he'll be coming in. Lots of cool things. I know the ownership group is head over heels about the announcement. It's huge. So that's cool. Game coming out. Lots of moving parts. We've got so that'd be Saturday the 27th in May, Conrad. Anybody in the Springfield area, and I don't think you're much of a baseball fan, but Cubs and Cardinal fans are a whole different.
Oh yes, sir,
buddy. It is. It's almost Auburn, Alabama. It's any kind of type of rivalry. My partner Jamie and his wife, one's a Cubs fan, one's a Cardinals fan. So those rivalries run deep. But we're having the Legends game last year, packed house. It's amazing. Springfield is right in the middle of Illinois, so a few hours north of Chicago, a few hours south to St. Louis, so right in the middle of it. So we're having our second annual Legends game. Pack it out. Great interactive autographs, and those players get out there, and lots of community leaders step in. So yeah, baseball season's cranking up. I actually got my world T-shirt on that kind of represents the baseball jive, if you
By the
will.
way, if you're a baseball fan, I don't know why you wouldn't support this, because there's going to be wrestling luminaries and wrestling themed fun and family fun baseball. It's a great time for everybody. Check it out. You want to make sure you're keeping up with everything that the shoes are doing. And of course, you want to keep up with WrestleQuest. But the reason we're here today,
Oh boy,
is not to tell MJF to kiss that belt goodbye, because we know it's coming home to Hendersonville.
Yeah.
We're talking about something that you've done not once, but twice, starting your own company. And we've talked about, can't believe this is real, 2 years ago, because as we're recording right now, Jeff, as you recall, this is about the 2-year anniversary of when we first started My World. We said we're going to come out right after WrestleMania. Here we are. Time flies, man. Well, listen,
Right.
we told the story of how you start TNA, and I think those are some of my favorite episodes, because really and truly, and I mean this, and I know there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with this, but there's only two people who can tell that story: Tony Khan and Jeff Jarrett. Tony Khan started AEW out of thin air. Jeff Jarrett started TNA out of thin air, and nobody else has that story to tell. Nobody has gotten that type of viewership, gotten that sort of success. I mean, both of these companies are still running today. And there was another one you tried, and we've talked about your return to Impact, but now today it's time for us to finally, I've been looking forward to this one, discuss Global Force Wrestling. And there's been a lot of discussion about your time in TNA and how it came to an end and all that jazz. And we'll talk about that another time in more detail. But when you find yourself no longer at the helm in TNA, you still are excited about the opportunity. This is your family business. It's all you've really ever done. It makes sense for you to find a spot to build another company. And I'm sure you said to yourself, hey, I can do this again. Why were you itching to do it again? And were you hoping to apply some of the lessons you learned from starting TNA originally to this venture?
Starting Global Force Wrestling. So that is kind of our diving off point. And Conrad, as I looked at the research, and candidly, there was a lot of the research that's not public. This is all, Conrad, a lot of this may be for the first time. I don't know how in depth we've got, but the first time you've even heard some of this stuff. But I didn't really know where you wanted to jump off, because the TNA story, I don't say was a lot simpler, but WCW went away. There was a void in the marketplace. We've heard kind of all the foundations on why I thought there was going to be an opportunity. But essentially, the number one is that without a number two, there's no such thing as a number one. And when Vince bought his competition, it was just essentially the WWE and others. And when I say others, small independent promotions around the globe. Yes, Japan had a scene, and I know there's other folks out there that, yeah, Mexico was going, but it was just a 2001, 2002, completely different generation. Here we are 20 years later. But in this scenario, here we are, 10 years later. And so, Conrad, I think the best way, why did I think, of course, I'm going to try to use all my life lessons and then some. But, in 2009, when me and, I'll call it, and I refer to it on the Dixie Power Play, and I was removed from creative, and, sent home and all that nonsense. But in 2010, I came back, and me and Bob came to an agreement, Bob Carter, that, okay, Jeff, you focus on international and live events, go create revenue. And I dove in head first, and I was really, really excited. And with Don West and others on the live events, Andy Barton, namely, we had success internationally. lots of success, even tours and everything that went with that. But that went through 2010, 2011, 2012. By the time we had gotten essentially to the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, the writing was on the wall. The conversations were being had, not just in Nashville, but in Dallas. Dean Broadhead referred to it as the financial death spiral is in process. No need to go into detail here, but I saw the writing on the wall, and I made a very conscious decision. Karen had mixed emotions about it. A lot of folks did, but I knew the trajectory. I kind of knew we were headed. I knew the internal landscape in that, Conrad, in a lot of ways, I thought to myself, I thought, am I going to just sort of stay the course and flounder and let this ship sink? Or am I going to go gamble on myself again? Not saying that I didn't have options, because there's a lot of things, what ifs, I could have done this, I could have done that. But I knew in 2013, the way we were headed, and I say we, collectively TNA, that it was ugly and getting uglier. I know the Hogan-Dixie situation wasn't pretty. The financial situation wasn't pretty. Obviously, BHE, Bischoff-Hervey situation. The Spike relationship was beyond strained. There was some international chattering going on that the brand wasn't what it once was. Now we're 2 years in, 3 years in, and some international markets didn't want to go with the branding. They bought TNA Impact, TNA Explosion, TNA pay-per-views. And that rebranding process that went from TNA to Impact, that didn't completely go over, and there was a lot of mixed emotions there. So in so many different ways, it was a mess, Conrad. And so I think the best place to jump off into starting Global Force, I think we've got to tell somewhat of the story of the exit, or I'm going to defer to you. But it was, I knew the time was over, and I'll let you let me throw it at you back on where exactly you want to start. But because I think your opening question was, we're going to use Wessons and why, and the writing was, to me, absolutely on the wall that TNA, as we knew it, was no longer going to exist. The revenues had radically dropped outside of the licensing deal, and our television contract was coming up, and I didn't have any optimism at all.
So, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. Had you always had the idea that, hey, I might go do this again, I might go start another company? I mean, because you had sort of played hokey pokey with the company there for a bit, and you no longer had your arms around your baby. You weren't in the driver's seat. You were being dictated to at times. And that's probably something that I would imagine you had at least been thinking about for a while, or is that not the case?
So this is a good jumping off point. Toby Keith, we've talked about Toby being on the very first show and singing, his hit songs, and just, a long time buddy. Me and Toby got to know each other back, 92 or 3 or 1 or whenever it was. That's when our friendship. But Toby, singer-songwriter, but a lot of folks don't even understand just how successful of a businessman. Maybe one of the smartest. Yeah, he's certainly top 3, 4, 5. I don't know. Maybe the smartest businessman I know. His acumen's unbelievable. Yes, he's a great singer and a performer and a songwriter.
Time out. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I just want our listeners to understand that when we're talking about Toby Keith, I know some non-country music fans probably think, oh, the guy who said put your boot in your ass. Okay, whatever you think of country music, let me say it again. Hundreds of millions of dollars. Continue.
Conrad, while I'm talking the Google machine, if you'll bring up Fortune magazine, Toby Keith, and find out what month he was on the cover.
Sure.
It's just a little interesting footnote.
That was July 2013.
Okay. So that magazine comes out in about April, right? It's a little early time. So, around Christmas time of 2012, I began to have those thoughts the hypothetical. It's funny how you cachet it nowadays, but it's the what ifs. What would that look like? And again, for new My World listeners, at this time, I'm still the single largest shareholder of TNA Entertainment. And like you said, my baby, if you will. And so there was a ton of mixed emotions. And can we right this ship? What is Viacom's outlook really going to be? What's the temperature on everything? How are we going to get this thing back cranking out money? Because when Impact was taken on the road, when we took it out at Universal Studios Orlando and took it on the road, that was a massive, massive, massive financial drain. And it didn't improve the ratings at all. Not saying that it should or would have, but actually they trailed down a little bit starting in 2013. And so, Conrad, I'll just say this: into 2012, beginning of 2013 is when I really started after a couple of discussions with Toby in that and understanding Toby and his team. And when I say team, it is advisors, attorneys, financial guys that he vets everything that comes across, every investment that comes across his desk. We transitioned from being drinking buddies and partying buddies and me going to his shows, and he would drop by wrestling events. And I think I mentioned this. He actually back in the early days came to a few Asylum shows and snuck in the back door. But our relationship began to transform in a very positive way into, okay, investor, an investor type mentality, in that I knew that I had to start creating documentation. And what is the real story here? And I just don't need to tell the story of 2012. Let's go back and really tell it from 2007. So I started compiling as much data as I could. And it was end of February, early March was when the original agreement, if you will, between me and Toby, and what I had to do. And, I had to get attorneys because, Conrad, I had to be very careful because, again, I'm an owner and I have to proceed on the best way to navigate a potential acquisition. And so NDAs had to be signed. And so end of February, March of 2013 is when the original NDAs were signed between Jeff Personal, Panda Energy International or Ventures or whatever it may be, and TNA Entertainment. All of those were signed during that time frame, and that's when the data drops began to exchange. That me and my guys could really start putting together the numbers on what the picture looked like, the valuation, what it had been, what it was currently, and what the projections of what it could be. Of course, lots of things what it could be were up in the air at the time. So that's kind of the route that we headed on in 2013. Again, not knowing the landscape at all in Dallas or Nashville on how it was going to be received. But, I felt in 2013, early 2013, that at the very least, radical change had to take place, or I didn't see us surviving.
How was it received? Did you broach this subject of what if I bought it to Bob and I got the money together to Bob? Is that the way it's pitched, or is it not that straightforward?
No, the original thing, being very diplomatic of the whole family dynamic in that situation, is that my attorney contacted Panda's attorney, and it was very well received. Completely understood. Hey, let's take a look at this from all options. There wasn't any, hey, and this is where, people are like, oh, what'd you offer him or this or that? It wasn't any of that. It was, hey, is there a deal to be done here? Bringing Toby Keith in as a strategic partner, it has a lot of value in a lot of ways. Let's take a look at that. And it was really received. I can't tell you how excited I was in February, March. And I knew that there was a family dynamic, and out of out of that situation, I learned because it was a set of circumstances that I wasn't going to get in the middle of that family dynamic, if at all possible, and I stayed out of it. They informed Dixie. It was a month and a half, 2 months into it. Not till Easter weekend did they inform her that NDAs had been signed. You know, on the one hand, I don't think it was received real well because it was maybe done behind her back. But that wasn't my
Intent.
it wasn't my no, and it wasn't my job. I was told specifically by my attorney, you let Bob and Janice handle that.
Yes.
And they did. And they did. And so that's when the balls began to start going. And it was a better part of late spring or, you know, or early summer that, again, Toby's touring. His tour cranks up every March, April. You know, he tours in the summer. So going out and visiting him, getting numbers, going to Lexington, going to Oklahoma, you know, figuring out that whole deal. And I'm still doing my day job. So it was a slow, steady progress. But at the end of the day, we were navigating the waters on how can we, you know, again, there was never a defined deal that we said, take it or leave it. It was, new management needs to be put in place.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because it's often been said that you got the cash lined up to buy TNA. So at first, it's not necessarily, you know, we're going to rebrand it as Global Force. It's, hey, let us get our arms around the thing and take the reins back. So you've sort of laid it out that Toby was going to be your guy. There were lots of other rumors at the time. Let's just talk about those rumors at the time. Did you have a conversation with Paul Heyman at all about this?
No.
Did you have a conversation with Jim Ross that included a visit to Toby Keith about this?
So they're both Oklahoma boys.
Yes.
And Jim through, I mean, just, I don't say social, but Toby and Jim absolutely had conversations about all of it that I wasn't a part of. But Toby, he respects Jim, who wouldn't, and, you know, wanted to kind of get his take on the whole deal. But no Paul Heyman, but Toby and JR definitely had conversations. And being two Okies, you know, Toby came to me and said, well, what do you think? And I said, it's Jim Ross. Is he really going to be available? What's the real reality of the situation? But not just, yeah, hell yeah. I'd love for him to be a part of it if at all possible. And Toby's laid back, simple mentality was, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, won't we? Yes, sir. That was his mindset.
So, you know, I hate to put you in a bad spot here. So answer however you think you should. I know you always do, but I just feel like I have to put that disclaimer here. This data dump means that you had access to all of the, for lack of a better word, impact financials. And I'm not to say that, you know, as the largest shareholder that you didn't have access to that, but hey, it's kind of somebody else's job at that point to keep up with it. And I'm sure you had access when you requested it, but now this is a different thing. You're going to have all of the data for quote unquote discovery or due diligence or whatever you want to call it. And at this point, you can really see where the rubber meets the road. What caught you by surprise the most? What, when you really dug into the numbers and you dug into the books and you could see the nitty gritty, warts and all, if you will, what surprised you the most?
And this is something that this type of level of conversation, I had never been. It was just, it was new ground to me, but the players that involved in Dallas and Toby's team had done it all the time. I mean,
Right.
This was all this. And so they knew that, hey man, what you just said, who cares what the warts are? Let's get it all on the table and discuss it and figure it out, because moving forward, there's no sense of doing, I got you. That always comes out, because we never ever discussed the Carter's out. It was always, you guys stay in as much as you possibly want to under the deal structure, essentially, predicated by what Toby wants. Toby was the one that was willing to put up, and be the lead horse across the board. And so that's where I went to work and tried to really drill down. But what surprised me the most, the amount of payables.
What was still outstanding, or what was being paid on a monthly basis?
No, yeah. What was in the IOU list?
Right, I got you.
Yeah.
So the bills had stacked up.
The bills, yes, yeah. That I again, which you just kind of said, me doing international and live events, I'm more on the revenue side. I'm creating revenue. Dallas is paying bills.
That's right.
And it wasn't anything that I was putting my head in the sand about. It just wasn't my role.
Right.
But that was, I don't want to I don't want to be too dramatic about it, but Conrad, my head spun on several of them.
So now, listen, we've heard those stories from Bruce on his Something to Wrestle podcast that, there were lots of things that were unpaid and people were getting upset. And people know the story with Billy Corgan, and we'll talk about all that some other time. But I am curious, from your perspective, did you see a path to profitability? Like, could you look back at the historicals? I know you're talking about present day 2013 here, but when you took a look at, 08, 09, 10, 11, were there years where you're like, oh man, that we just got to get back to that? Did you see that?
Without question. The talent bill tripled, not doubled. It had tripled. The live event revenue, the merchandise revenue, I'm talking about live at shows, as well as the online revenue. Remember, no Don West. Live events had essentially, rolled up the sidewalks and were, I don't say non-existent, but radically changed. So that revenue was definitely need to be restarted. And the international was still good. And the Spike deal was still good, but the revenue was day down. The expenses on production and talent just so out of control. So out of control.
I can't help myself as a business guy. And people used to make fun of this when we were first starting with Something to Wrestle, and Bruce and I were figuring out how to be podcasters. But I'm curious. Can you share with us listen, a lot of people have walked around with the idea and said it repeatedly. Impact never turned a profit. TNA was never profitable. Now, you and I know that's not true. Can you discuss any profit? Since this company's been sold a half a dozen times since, is that possible to talk about?
Yeah, no, TNA, I've said it multiple times. We got the Spike deal, the 1 hour deal. It's above break even, yes, but I'm not going to say, we were making money. When we went to 2 hours, we started making money. When we cranked up live events and merch and international, and again, everything's relative, but going from a startup to clearing 6, 8, 9 million a year, it's a game changer.
TNA had $9 million profitable years.
2.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty substantial.
Yeah.
Even when you look back through like all the territory days, how many folks were clearing $9 million a year?
No.
I know WCW.
With
Nitro, but WCW in 88 lost money, 89 lost money, 90, blah, 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 blah. Showed a little tiny profit 95, started to show substantial profit 96, 97, 98, 99, and then it just fell off a cliff. But $9 million is a lot of money.
A lot.
Yeah. Not top line gross, y'all. Net profit. So listen, you see that. And of course, Mr. Keith sees that. And you guys think, well, there's an opportunity here. We just got to sort of right the ship. What were the things that you thought needed to change quickly to make this a profitable machine again?
Like I said, I was never in production. Let me just start there. We had to clean up the payables, and again, that can all be managed, and just I can't tell you, when you take a product and go out and tour with it, in our case, but in any case, but in our case specifically, we left Universal Studios, that you basically paid monthly fixed cost. The truck didn't have to travel 500-mile jaunts. It was a fixed, everything was fixed in Orlando. And I'm not going to say exact because you had to pay labor, but let's just say, Conrad, for slice and dice, half numbers, half our crew didn't require production crew. Half our crew did not require airline and hotel and
Right.
per diems. So managing the production budget was first and foremost, because the ratings did not, like I said, they didn't go up. If anything, they went down a little bit, but you can't say they went down because we were on the road. I think it's more of other issues with it. But managing production expenses immediately was the first. And then talent, most of the time, can take care of itself. But again, now I'm looking at 2012 when you can just go look at the roster, massive amount of talent. And again, you can just look at 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, it jumped up, 2011, 12, it went through the roof. So talent production is always where a wrestling business can, it's what you got to manage. You got to manage. So those were the things that, again, getting everything in documentation where Toby's guys could vet it. And also, I mean, Conrad, I got guys, that we got our ratings data, and I pulled all that stuff in and did research, and we pulled data just from the time we went prime time and kind of showed that, and males 18 to 34. And we showed that. We showed international graphs on where it grew every year. It was a 40, 50 page document that was essentially the history of the financial story of TNA. If we'd have done this podcast, Conrad, in 2014, 15, buddy, I could have really rattled off some numbers because I knew it like the back of my hand. Because if Toby's going to invest, he has to have a comfort level that my guy knows everything inside and out. And that's how I viewed it. That's exactly. I mean, Karen used to go like, "What are you doing?" And I'm going, I want to make sure that I really understand all of this and cash flow and all this. And let me back up. As I first got into it, I started looking at the age payables, Conrad. And I'm like, now, why is this 120 days and 150 days and 180 days? I would have to dive into all of those things that, a 30-day or a 60-day, even a 90-day is something that if you're still in business with a guy who's renting you a piece of equipment that you use every week or every other week, that's just kind of cash flow. But when you have other items that they're payables that are way out there and they have their age payables, I had to really wrap my head in and dig a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And so that was the payables were a mess, a real mess.
So listen, we've talked about it a little bit, but did you set an expectation with Toby as to how much money this might require? Did you know?
Let me say this. Me and Toby's team looked at that, and I can't say the elephant in the room because we didn't know. And Toby was willing to take a gamble on himself in that if I acquire this thing and keep all the pieces of the puzzle and put him on top or add him to the mix, it's not like we were buying it and firing everybody. That wasn't Neil. We knew that, and the amount of conversation, when I look back on it, the amount of conversations that Toby and me had, I wish I could have shared them with the Carters, all of them, and just kind of his mindset and temperament, because Toby was very specific. You don't want to upset the entire process because look at the track record, look at the success. You don't want them thinking they're gambling or betting or getting in bed with a completely set of different circumstances. It's just and I'm like, yeah, Toby, it's this Fortune guy that's on Fortune 500 magazine this month or last month or 2 months ago or 3 months ago. We're putting him in the mix. That was the picture, and
Right.
the real reality picture of that was that Toby is in the entertainment business. I mean, I think he may be one of the only guys in history that when American Idol was red hot, they asked him to be a part of it, and he turned them down. I mean, he is a true mastermind of entertainment industry.
So you didn't have a real idea of what it might cost, but did you have a ballpark?
Oh, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to take off. I mean, you got to assume all the payables, millions, and
Wait, millions of payables.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's ugly.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say it's 5 million, but north of $1 million,
Okay.
inching up toward the next number.
Okay.
But
Of way past due aged bills.
and well, that's what I'm saying is I could probably I'm not I don't want to.
No, I understand.
Some of that
I'm not
was
gonna be
60,
specific. I understand.
yeah. I mean, some of that 60, 90, and 120. I just remember definitely north, and I was just like, wow. But anyway, so you got to assume all that, period. Then what kind of capital is he going to put into it right out of the gate? That is not the Carter money, not Jeff Jarrett money, not anything other than I want to invest in this thing. Hey, Jeff, hypothetically speaking, how can you make this organization better? What can you do to raise its game? A couple of answers that I gave him right off the bat is marketing campaign. Let's do a marketing campaign and back it up, but brand our whatever it may be. Again, this is really early days. I still call it early days of social media, but the digital, and we were early adopters of the YouTube strategy, but get in and start creating content, do webisodes, and just, spend some money on character development outside of the Spike program, be the best partner we could be with Spike. Hey, Spike, if we put up X amount of dollars, will you put up X amount of dollars? Really try to invest in the brand and in our partners. Toby was like, we need to, he would ask me, what do our partners think about us? And I'm like, we've delivered good ratings for a lot of years. Yeah, they're down. But they spend a lot of money on this show. And our ultimate goal is to get another program, whether it's a 1 or a 2 hour or a reality show or whatever it may be. Toby wanted to be a good partner. And then on top of that hey, Carter family. And Toby is his kind of a laid back saying is they pulled the wagon for a while. They got any wishes or wants that they want as a part of moving forward? So no, Conrad, I think you're looking for, was there a hard dollar? We never got there. I don't think that's putting words in. I don't know, but we really never got that far.
Did you run scenarios for how much you thought a marketing campaign might need to be?
And again, that's what Toby, I don't say it's what he does, but when he has an album release or a single release, and
They're doing it. Yeah, I got you.
They know ballparks, but now we're doing, but it's a different deal. The label would be his partner, but radio and all that. But okay, so now Viacom's a partner, and he's in the music business, but he knew in his mind, I'm going to put some cash behind this thing. I'm going to get this lift up, because he knew where it could go.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the reason it doesn't work. We'll probably do more on this in the future, but we're trying to talk about Global Force today. And we know that ultimately you were not successful in your attempt to acquire TNA or Impact as it was. And there's a rumor out at the time as to why that deal fell apart, that perhaps Mr. Carter had a request of Mr. Keith that he just didn't think he could honor. And I thought to myself, that sounds like wrestling nonsense. So what really happened? Why didn't it happen?
At the end of the day, I think it comes down to the simple fact that Bob Carter had always been the alpha male and dictated his destiny. He knew all the water under the bridge. He also had, and look, at the end of the day, fear and uncertainty, I've been on all sides of it. You know, what's the acronym for fear? False evidence appearing real. I believe Dixie wasn't sure, or shall I say, fearful of the unknown. If Toby gets control, what does my future look like? And under no uncertain terms, we let Bob and Janice and Dixie and the whole anybody. Our plans are to keep Dixie on board, but there are no guarantees that Jeff's going to stay on board. And Toby told them that if he don't run it the way I want it run, he's out. I mean, Toby was the lead horse. If Dixie doesn't do, I mean, you know, he's a businessman. So he wasn't going to give that line of BS of, hey, this and that. But I absolutely believed every word that came out of his mouth is that we're going to get this thing rowing and everybody's going to row in the right direction or they will be off the boat. And we're going to get this thing back rolling and then some. So there was no, you know, Dixie's got to stay on TV or this or that. I do believe at the end of the day, Dixie wanted to stay in control, and that was a non-starter. The biggest, and I'll kind of throw this out there, this is the story behind the story. They were attracted to having Toby as their partner, so much so that Toby called me and said, hey, Panda wants to come visit me at the golf course. And I mean, wants to come visit me in Oklahoma and have a meeting with me. I told them to meet me at the golf course at such and such day at this time that I'd meet with him. I'm just letting you know. I said, okay. And he said, just let it sit. But I just, as partners, I kind of want you to know, you got any feedback on it? And I'm like, oh, this is all brand new to me. I have no idea. You know, you've got me single screen. I'd love to see Conrad's look on his face when I tell him this part of it. My delusional optimism really kicked in here because I'm thinking Panda's going to go up there. They don't want Jeff in the room, and they just want to have a good warm and fuzzy. And let's just see what our future looks like, and let's close this deal because the financials don't look good, and we got to get the nose up. And so Dixie's not involved in this meeting. It's Dallas folks, and they meet with Toby, and the meeting lasts about 10 minutes.
Oh,
hey, we'd like to have a conversation with you, and we'd really like to be partners with you and see a lot of strategic value and a lot of upside. But if there is a way to do this, to bring you on board and not include Jeff and let us stay as the lead horse, is there any kind of scenario we could work out? Toby got up and said, I've got a tea time. I really appreciate you guys coming up here to have a conversation. Thank you very much. Maybe there's an opportunity down the road. Kobe called me from somewhere between the clubhouse and the first tee and gave me that information as if he was regurgitating an in and out order. Hey, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Hey, dude, I'll talk at you later. Bye. Okay.
so something you had worked on this entire time for months at this point came crumbling down in 10 minutes.
Again, I'm chuckling at myself now. We all live and learn, and what's happened in the past, it's completely water under the bridge. It all is what it is. I am tickled to death to be kicking the shit out of MJF. But the reality is, Conrad, I went into it thinking, all right, this is the final. We're going to push this ball across the finish line. How stupid am I, Conrad? Seriously, how stupid am I?
Well, as you may recall, there was a lot of wrestling rumor at the time that Toby was in, but he didn't want to leave Dixie as an on-screen character. And I thought that just sounds like wrestling stuff.
It was wrestling stuff.
The reality is the Carters were glad that you found a source for some cash and a life raft. Just wanted to make sure you weren't on board.
In the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Toby in the lead. Now I can kind of digest me because of kind of some personal issues. Forget the track record of the profitability, but maybe there's a personal dynamic. But Toby?
And to be clear, this was the scenario of not necessarily a full-blown acquisition, but let us buy in too. Not buy you out, but let us buy in.
You talking about me and Toby?
Yes.
It was 51-49 kind of scenario. I'm just giving that vernacular.
Yes. And do you think Toby would have entertained, we're going to buy the whole thing soup to nuts? Like not a piece, but all of it. Do you think Toby would have entertained that?
Look, and I used to chuckle in between cups of coffee. You know, there's a saying and there's a video. This is kind of a cornbread saying or not, but Conrad, have you heard, you only need to get rich once?
Yes.
Okay. Toby didn't need any more money by any stretch of the imagination.
He's all set. He's good.
Big time. Does he like wrestling? Sure. That has nothing to do with doing a business deal. He wanted the right deal structure. He always, whether it was buying a racehorse, a golf course, a tequila brand, a tour, a sponsorship, whatever, it's got to be the right business deal. He saw a real opportunity. Thank God, he believed in me wholeheartedly, and he wanted the right deal. He wanted the people who had pulled the wagon, the Carters, he wanted them to say, hey, here's the kind of deal we'd like to structure. And if it would have been, we pulled it this long and we want this much for all of it and we're out, he absolutely would have got into the negotiation game. Absolutely. He wanted, that's how, when I tell you, and this is where it's funny, we're almost 2 years and we're just, the diplomacy that he used throughout that, Conrad, I learned a boatload. I really did. He wanted them to dictate the terms because he didn't know, he understood family dynamics. He understood a lot of things. He just wanted the right business deal.
Right. Well, listen, I hate to hear that they were trying to find a way to cut you out. But what I'm glad to say is nobody's cutting you out with Henson Shaving. No more nicks, no more cuts, no more scrapes. It's the best doggone razor you can ever find. I'm serious. Jeff and I are absolutely in love with this product. I've got one in my travel bag. I've got one here at the house. I've got one at the office. My dad has one. My barber has one. They're sold. And you will be too. This is the last razor you'll ever need. You see, not only is it better than what you've been doing, it's also cheaper. Let me explain. I can't believe this is real, but Henson Shaving is an aerospace parts manufacturer that's made parts for the International Space Station and the Mars rover, and now they're bringing that same precision engineering to your doggone face. They're using their aerospace grade CNC machines to make metal razors that just extend 0.0013 inches, which is less than the thickness of a human hair. And that means a secure and stable blade with a vibration-free shave, and it gets better. The razor has built-in channels to evacuate hair and cream, which makes clogging virtually impossible. What I respect most about Henson Shaving, though, is that these cats wanted to make the best razor, not the best razor business. Some of these other razors, they're going to try to convince you to get a subscription. They're going to build you a plastic razor, maybe something that's proprietary that only works on theirs. They're essentially going to have some planned obsolescence. because they're going to come back one day and say, well, we've redesigned it. You think your grandpa needed 17 blades and an aloe vera strip? And no, your grandpa used a standard dual edge blade, the same one like the Bizoys use. And this is that same old school feel, but with new school tech because it's 0.0013 inches. But here's my favorite part. Once you own the razor, and this is the last razor you'll ever need, it's only going to run you $3 to $5 a year for the blades. They keep the blades under lock and key down at the store because it's expensive. It proves once again that Henson Shaving is not only better than what you've been doing, it's also cheaper. It's time to say no to subscriptions and yes to a razor that will last you a lifetime. Visit hensonshaving.com/myworld to pick the razor for you and use the code MYWORLD, and you'll get 2 years worth of blades for free with your razor. Just be sure to add them to your cart. That's 100 free blades when you head to hensonshaving.com/myworld and use the promo code MYWORLD. Jeff, we've had a lot of fun, but serious business. The Henson Razor Man, Henson Shaving, these folks got it together, do they not?
Connie, I can say this with authority. I've had a lot of razor blades in my hands over the years.
Yep.
But this Pally, as Jackie Fargo would say, it don't get no better than this. No, all kidding aside, folks, my world listeners, Conrad and myself chuckle a lot, like to have a lot of fun, joke on razor blades, but this stuff is too simple and too good to be true. It's that close a shave. I kid you not. Give it a shot. Just give it a shot.
You mentioned a minute ago something that I've wanted to ask, but I wasn't sure if it was off color, pardon the pun. You held a lot of razors in your hand. Have you ever, I mean, how thin this is in your hand, it doesn't even feel like you're holding a razor blade, does it not?
No. It's look, you drill it down to, you think to yourself when you see an old pickup truck just has 2 doors.
Yes.
Why does it not have 3 and 4? Well, they didn't have the technology back then, Jeff. I guess in old school razor blades, they had to be this thick. How the heck do they shave them that thin and perfect? I have
aerospace grade engineering. I'm telling you, it's the best shave I've ever had. I really love this product and I'm going to use it forever and ever. And listen, every now and again we do ads and hey, we're trying to do our best to tell you this is a good product and we like it. We love this one.
Yeah, we do.
HensonShaving.com/myworld. It's a part of my real life. It will be until I die. Go see why. HensonShaving.com/myworld. Hey, so man, let's talk about, what's next. So you get this call from Toby that's very matter of fact. And I'm sure, you can just feel it in the pit of your stomach. Your heart sinks like, damn it. I thought I had all this figured out. Your next call is to Karen, your dad, someone on
the so Cumming Station, 209 10th Avenue South, Nashville, Tennessee. I can tell you exactly where I was because I looked down, knowing the meeting started at either 9 or 10 o'clock, tea time, whatever it is, thinking I'm going to get a call from Toby in about an hour, whatever, one of those deals.
Yeah.
It's like getting a jury verdict back. Oh my God, he's already calling back. Whoa. So I just laugh at myself now thinking about how naive I was. Conrad, I jumped up and answered the phone and went into the stairwell because I was going to go downstairs and outside and talk to him. I got to the top of the stairwell and stopped because, it's one of those phone calls where, okay, this ain't, I knew from, hey bud, you got a second. It's all it's going to take. Well, what? Yeah. I don't know if he said that, but I knew the conversation. I just stopped and he finished it. And it was, it certainly wasn't more than 5-minute call. I may have asked 1 or 2 dumbfounded questions and, he was ready to move on with his golf game. It was that simple. Probably knowing Tobe, maybe a little frustrated that he'd spent time and effort and money on this deal for better part of a year. Probably he didn't feel sorry for me, but probably a little embarrassed for me, like,
Disappointed for you is the right word.
okay, one of those deals. As I said here, I don't remember my first call. I would probably think that I called my attorney. I probably, because no need to go down the emotional route at this stage, because Karen was an emotional, it was the last thing on earth that I kind of thought that was the reality. Like, no way. My attorney would probably be the call, and here's the reality. And, great folks.
Were you talking to your dad at this point? Or were y'all estranged?
Estranged. I mean, the bad years were 04, 05, 06 till about Karen came into my life. And I think I've told that story. Karen came into my life into 09, 2010. And she's like, what the hell is going on? And we kind of all reconnected, me and my mom, me and my dad, in 2010. So we had a relationship, nothing like we had in my sobriety, nothing like that. But we did have a relationship. So we weren't estranged. But no, he didn't get a phone call.
I just wondered, since he knew all the players, would he be somebody? You were pretty friendly with Andy Barton.
Yep.
Would he have been somebody you would have called and talked to about this?
No, absolutely not. And that'll come up here in a minute. Now, to kind of tell you the set of circumstances. I specifically talked to no one inside the organization on
Because
purpose.
at that point, it was made clear to you, they want me out. I got to leave.
No, not want me out. Just they're not doing the deal with Toby.
Yeah.
When Toby said no, there's under no circumstance. It was, okay, well, no matter what Jeff is attached to, there's no acquisition happening, period. They're going to stay the course. And whatever that may or may not have been. But Jeff acquiring any type of leadership role was not in the cards.
Well, what happens next? You said you'd get to it. Like, how do we get from you're still a part of it to now you're going to go out and start your own thing?
A couple of days, maybe a week went by, because that was early December. Couple of days, whatever, a little bit of time went by, and I recircled with Toby and I said, well, bud, he said, well, you tell me. It's your life and you're the wrestling guy. What do you think? And I go, I wasn't bluffing you when I told you that I think a deal will be done. And the main reason that I think the deal will be done is twofold. One, if we drew up a strategic partner in the dictionary, that's you. You have access to a Rolodex on all facets, that, Toby said it. I don't need wrestling knowledge. I need entertainment. He was a great strategic partner. And on the other side of the ledger that I told Toby over and over, and his team, and they agreed, is that Panda, they didn't have to do anything, and they didn't. And we saw that where that headed, but they needed to do something bad because it was ugly. Payables were ugly and the revenues keep going down. And it was pretty obvious there wasn't a strategic plan in place to lift the nose up and get going. And so what was next? I said, Toby, give me a little time, but if I leave and start something new, are you in? He said, Jeff, I've told you from the beginning, I'm in. We've got to create the right deal structure and figure out the right way to get this thing off the ground. But I believe in you now. I believed in you 20 years ago or whatever, 10 years ago. Yes. So his short answer was, yeah, I'm there. If that's what you think, he put not just 100% of the decision in my lap, but in return, he also said, yeah, Jeff, I'm in. We just got to kind of figure out what that looks like. And right now, I don't expect you to have that answer because you've been working better part of the last year on acquiring this place. So I know you don't have the plan in place. At least I don't think you do. And I said, I don't. I don't. that was, kind of the situation. Talked to my attorneys, and they said, look, you can't start working on another promotion while you're drawing a paycheck from it. That's a conflict of interest. You can't go start something, under this roof. And so I said, okay, then I see the writing on the wall. And look, things will continue to not get better. And Conrad, you can kind of look at the AJ Styles contract. When that was coming up, end of 2013, there were a bunch of factors that I kind of knew that change had to take place. And so, Conrad, my oldest daughter was in a high school basketball tournament in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Me and the girls drove over there. And I had thought about it, but my attorney said, look, what do you think? And I said, let's just make it a clean resignation and just kind of move on, and step aside. And, they, lawyers and accountants, look, my ownership, that doesn't change at all. That's a completely separate deal. As far as my, executive role, I had to resign. And so I sent that resignation letter in, and Andy Barton didn't know, Dean Broadhead didn't know, no one within the company knew. I hit send over in Hilton Head because I got up and thought about it and prayed on it. And I just, guidance, and is this the right move? And I just kept coming back to, it's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable, the direction it's going. And they pretty much gave me the answer, what they thought of me, under no uncertain terms. I mean, it was very clear. It wasn't a Bob issue, and it wasn't a Janet issue. It was a Dixie issue that I was never either get her trust back or whatever it was. There was nothing in the cards for us working together. And so I pulled the trigger and resigned.
How did that go?
With
the resignation, like is it a weight lifted off your shoulders, or?
Yes,
Okay.
it was yes, 1,000%, 100%, as the T-shirt says. Just because that was not something that had been building for even a couple of months. I knew change was needed. I always kind of go back to that whole rebranding mess that they look, and me and you've talked offline on a couple of this. I wish I would have had the relationship with Eric that I do now, that what he didn't know. I don't think Eric would have ever dreamed that TNA would have made millions in profits ever. Because I don't believe that's the story that he was told. He was told, hey, come in. We need your help, or whatever it may be. And because the rebranding, and I'm just saying this as a one of many factors. Get rid of that 6-sided ring. Let's get out of Orlando. Your talent here, they all need a facelift or let go. We're going to bring in this whole new slew of talent. I mean, there was radical change across the board, and every indicator from our partners, it was not a good thing. So my kind of scratching my head started in 2011. So, you say, way the world lifted off, probably somewhere in 2011 and 12. And then obviously by the end of 13, I knew we are headed down the wrong train track in so many ways. And we were.
So listen, I know that this has to be frustrating. But I just want to ask, because we know eventually the Carters do sell and they let this thing go. Not part of it, but almost every bit of it. And I don't think any of that was ever really made public, but you and I both hear things. From my understanding, the Toby Keith offer didn't necessarily put any money in the Carters' pockets. It just righted the ship, caught up some receivables, and it was a new investment. And now we're partners in this thing together. There wasn't necessarily a big payday for the Carters, right?
We never got there. Remember that to me is it's the what if that will never be answered.
Yes.
Had Bob Carter said, I want X amount of dollars for this, and this is why, he
It
would
could
have.
have been a conversation. But we never got that far.
What? Again, it's a completely set of different circumstances because you can show revenue.
Yes.
Now, you can show a lot of expenses and a lot of payables, but you can also show at least 22 million revenue.
Right.
When the later, when the Spike deal was gone and the Corrigan and then the Anthem and all that, that revenue was nowhere close to that, pal. I mean, it's a completely different set of circumstances.
It's just crazy to me to think what could have been, but now you've resigned, and I'm sure people at your house and your friends are saying, well, what's next? Did Karen and some of your friends like, oh, I don't know, Mr. Sadler, think you were crazy for trying to do this again?
Karen didn't. Karen was 100% engaged in, you can do this.
Right.
You can do this. We didn't know what it was going to look like. We really didn't. We knew, and I told myself, let's really look at the landscape. Because I look at 2014, 2015, 2016. That's kind of the story of my post TNA years. Because by the end of 2016, I was going back into Anthem / Impact. But 2014, January, February, March, April was really me just kind of making phone calls and getting the lay of the land and diving into independent wrestling. I mean, like I'd never done before. Just really looking, I mean, I looked at WWE through a whole new lens as much as possible. I just really took 60, 90 days to just kind of drill down on the landscape. Hermie, again, was pretty energized in that, yeah, man, let's, I'll help you anyway. You know, Hermie's not per se the wrestling expert, but he's like, I'll help you any way I can. You kind of lead me in a direction you want me to go turn over rocks, and I will. And so that was kind of the whole kind of look out. And at this time, you know, Kevin Sullivan was no longer with them. And so, you know,
Kevin Sullivan, the production guy, not the devil.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. Yeah. Sully, you're right.
Yeah.
And look, yeah, I mean, so, you know, I don't say continued our friendship, but, you know, our conversations on, all right. And look, a lot of this will run together. Like, was it January, February, March? When did this come out? But no, we, and I say we, me, Sully, Karen, you know, a small group of us is, yeah, let's go do something. Toby is definitely going to be there. If we can make something happen, let's go give it a shot.
There's lots of social media buzz that you guys created using a hashtag. It's coming. Did you have in your mind's eye a handful of guys you wanted to lock down as far as featured talent or television networks you thought you could get maybe a conversation with? Or,
I mean, here's what, so we'll call it the it's coming, the hashtag it's coming. I don't think Sully, I don't think Karen, that was to really just kind of create buzz.
Yeah. Build some anticipation.
I never dreamed that a simple little YouTube video that would start getting that many views, or, I mean, it started, and I don't want to oversell this, but Conrad, it surprised me, like, oh, wow, people do care what I'm doing, you know, because it was, you know, not just from a talent perspective, but from a leadership role. It was, I didn't leave on a high note, if you will. I remember the last TVs that I produced, because I was on headsets, AJ and Nick Aldis and the Title Switch, and the last set of Impact tapings I worked in. I'm trying to think, because I think Eric and them were gone. And, you know, I don't know all the players in the deal, but I was on headsets and Dixie was 2 seats down. I was kind of in my element producing a lot of stuff. And I can remember thinking, man, it can be so simple and easy. Knowing in my mind, this is first, second week of December that I'm resigning or thinking about resigning at that time. And so when I left and I got phone calls, I mean, AJ Styles told me later that when he heard about my resignation, he knew that things internally were much worse off than he ever dreamed of. And I got that vibe and phone calls and having conversations. And I didn't expect this, but people were like, okay, if he's out, what don't we know? And I didn't really think that part of it through because in my eyes, TNA had really run with me without the helm since January of 2010, essentially, or a month or two before that. But I got a lot of phone calls saying, okay, the one of the owners left,
Right.
for lack of a better word. And so, you know, I don't say me and Sully were having fun with it, but we were just kind of creating noise. And those videos started getting buzz. And then, you know, the name of the company, Global Force Wrestling, and I started thinking through that. And then, if we're going to do this, as we both know, I got to figure out the IP, the LLC, got to do the ink, got to do this, got to do that. You know, started putting those legal building blocks in place. And okay, in the state of Tennessee, you got to have a board of directors. And okay, how are we going to do that? Just all the legal mumbo jumbo, but the building blocks, I had made up my mind. Had conversations with Toby about that, and look, he was cool with everything. And let's lock in some social media handles and some YouTube and all that kind of stuff. And is like, all right, let's figure this out. Let's do building blocks and not getting too far of it. But again, you asked this about the talent. I started, I mean, literally started. I called it a database or a Rolodex or whatever you want. I don't know what we originally called it, but anyway, just the amount of talent. It was amazing to me as the wrestling business from 2002 to 2000, we'll call it 14, just the accessibility. And nowadays, God almighty, Conrad, I mean, you know, Mania weekend or Royal Rumble weekend or Full Gear weekend or Double or Nothing, just all the shoulder bits. There's so much wrestling going on in the world. It's amazing. I mean, it is amazing how much is out there. And that was in 2014 is when I began to see it is a different time starting an organization than it was in 2002.
Totally different time, I'm sure. The day after WrestleMania 30, my first WrestleMania, I was there, and you had a lot of buzz. People were wondering, what is it? What is it? What is it? And then here comes the big announcement. After weeks of speculation and unprecedented internet buzz surrounding the hashtag "It's Coming," it is here. Legendary performer and third generation promoter Jeff Jarrett and his wife Karen are set to unveil Global Force Wrestling, globalforcewrestling.com, which promises to be the most fan interactive and immersive wrestling experience in history. Are those buzzwords, or did you have a different idea?
It's engagement across the board on every touch point. And it's, look, what we did at live events in 2007 or 8 was a slice for a live event at a TV, online. I'm a firm believer, and I was once I really started, and I still don't, nobody completely understands social media because it changes every day. Snapchat,
Right.
TikTok, all of that. But I'm going to go back to my early foundation days, Conrad, Louisville Gardens, Nashville Sports Arena, Memphis Mid-South Coliseum. It is such, we are in a very, very unique industry in that the engagement that our consumers have with us continues to evolve.
Yes.
In the 80s, it was on one level. On the 90s, another level. but you're not going to put the toothpaste back in the tube. All Access reality show came out. Oh, they're pulling the curtain back a little bit more. When you look back on the history of the business, the curtain has always been pulled back, quote unquote, too far. Oh no, wow, they did. Whoa, just all that kind of nonsense. It's just kind of the nature of the business. So I believe creating content, producing content, I think, and there's some things that Conrad, that I have in my running notepad to this day. I don't call it my it's kind of, I have handwritten notepads that meetings and this call and that call and stuff that's kind of irrelevant. It's one I want to go back. I never throw it away, but I'll stash it away. But I have at the back of one of my notepads, different ideas, different concepts that continue to evolve. That's been going. I started this in 2011, I think, maybe. Just always kind of concepts and ideas and thought processes and touch points and different promotions and all that. So you're saying the buzzwords about immersive and interactive. Yes. And I think my mindset in 2014 and 2023 are the same. It needs to be immersive engagement. Yeah. What it would look like, it's going to continue to evolve for sure. And speaking of that, I can't believe I didn't hit this at the top. Conrad, I'm mad at myself, but right now I want to tell you congratulations.
Well, thank you, sir.
The award, and I meant to do that off the top. Again, it's the afternoon. I'm in this afternoon drive. I'm more like Castigo morning drive. Seriously, winning the award, but it kind of goes to this part of our conversation. You are a hell of a businessman. I love that post you sent me about your teacher saying that he was worried about you being you may want to tell that story, but no, congrats, folks. We are talking to a multi-award winner, but the Melby Award is correct, right? The National Wrestling Hall of Fame.
The Gordon Soley Award.
How bad? Melby.
So I think this is the third time Gordon Soley was recipient number 1.
Yep.
Jim Ross was recipient number 2, and somehow I'm number 3, and candidly, I don't belong there.
But no. Now, hold on. We'll call you, which you always, folks, Conrad says he's so full of shit half the time. I don't know what I'm doing, Jeff. Oh, bullshit. Anyway, but you being, you do know what you're doing. But no, the mortgage broker winning the Gordon Soley Award doesn't jive off the surface. But when you pull the layer of the onion back and kind of look at this and go, okay, you've got Raw, you've got SmackDown, you've got Dynamite, you've got Rampage, and I'm going to say this, you may be upset at me, but Lance Russell was a voice in Memphis that the people trusted. Right? You agree?
I would agree with that. They trust Lance Russell, yes.
In the Attitude Era, it's sports entertainment, shock jock, Sable's doing this, Stone Cold's doing that, Mick Foley's doing all this. Jim Ross was a voice they trusted.
Yes, absolutely.
It just that's the nature of the beast. Fast forward 20-something years, the business is so polished and so shiny, and we've got to get this ad read in here, and you got this event. I mean, it's the nature of the beast goes with what Michael Cole does, what Excalibur does. God bless Excalibur. He is unbelievably talented, like beyond talented. But at the end of the day, I don't say that there's a distrust, but you don't put that in the same vernacular with wrestling announcers anymore. You take Conrad Thompson, a podcaster that is not afraid to get his guest and make him cry, or no, but you'll call the bullshit flag on Eric. You'll tell your father-in-law, now, Rick, what you really mean by this? And Rick kind of wiggles his way out of his chair and does this and does that, and then Mick, you pull Mick. I'm serious. They trust your voice. So congrats. I don't know where we were at the topic, but I'm pissed off that I didn't say it. But all kidding aside, partner, proud of you, man.
Well, I appreciate it. I don't think I deserve to be in a wrestling Hall of Fame, but
shut up.
When Mr. Briscoe called, I said, well, Mr. Briscoe, I don't think I deserve to be there. And he goes, well, you were the top vote getter for the category. I said, well, I don't know what to say. He goes, you say yes, damn it. I was like, okay, well, yes, Mr. Risco, but I'm not trying to all shucks here, Jeff. It's just, it was unexpected.
That's
That's not a call you expect to get.
I'm happy for you. Happy.
I did play my dad in checkers today, though, at the office, as we do from time to time. And I start whooping him pretty good. And he goes, man, I'm getting my ass kicked today. And I said, yeah, by a Hall of Famer, too.
Larry.
He thought that was the funniest thing ever.
That's good. Anyway,
we're talking about immersive in your quote here.
Interactive engagement. But the fans, as we've evolved through the years, things don't look like. You're not going to go back to having Lance Russell and Dave Brown sit at a desk. You're not going to go back to having Gorilla and Bobby, Vince and Jesse, JR and the King. That style. The business evolves. But what I don't think evolves is immersive experience and engagement. The immersive experience in the Kaufman era, that angle, the lady on the front row, she was engaged, and everybody in the arena. I know I'm getting way down the rabbit hole. They live vicariously through that fan interacting, Rosie interacting with Andy and all that. Time goes on, different things. Nowadays, it's Bad Bunny, Logan Paul Walter Hauser getting his ass whooped. It's the world. Our business just continues to evolve, but the engagement is just going to keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. I'll say this: if we don't, we're going to lose them. And I don't see us. The business is booming. Look at the numbers.
Well, here's what you said in 2014. Because of new media, new technology, and more tune-in or more in-tune fans than we've ever had, wrestling is poised for another boom like it experienced in the mid-'80s and late 1990s. By the way, JArrett said that in April of 2014. I think he was right. What we're going to deliver is a multi-platform, innovative brand that will engage fans in ways they've never experienced. It will provide a fresh perspective inside the business that fans have been clamoring for. Was your goal to shoot wrestling differently? Just present the television angles and the way it's positioned? And I mean, did you imagine by this point, we're talking 2014, did you imagine we'd all be wearing Oculus Rift type headsets and watching wrestling, or did you have a vision for that?
And look, I've still got some of these. I hope some of my ideas come to fruition.
So we're not going to tattle too much. I get it here.
Yeah, but we're not. But as far as I will answer your question, I don't think you reinvent the wheel on the mechanics of shooting the industry. I mean, you look at, I think Fox Sports on any sport they do. I mean, NFL football for sure, college football, booming numbers, NASCAR, they shoot it different. There's over, 60 cameras they have at a track, 60, 30 in each, one in each car. So that's 30 there. And then another 30 around the track. Anyway, they shoot things differently, but at the end of the day, they're still shooting the race. So you still got to shoot the squared circle or what have you. I don't think the mechanics of that. Now look, you can tweak it and you can do a couple of different things like that. And you can make this guy's entrance look different than this guy's entrance. But for the most part, I don't think you reinvent the wheel mechanically how you shoot it. The stories, absolutely. I think the storytelling has to evolve. It's like Andy Griffith to Three's Company, to Happy Days, to Seinfeld, or Cheers, to Seinfeld, to Succession. There's a number of shows you can show to there. Television evolves. Wrestling's got to evolve as well.
You would continue in the press release. Videos of the Jarretts previewing the new promotion attached to the hashtag "It's Coming" have generated more than 1 million views. Meanwhile, Jeff and Karen have been searching the United States and the international ranks in search of undiscovered talent. The response has been overwhelming, with more than 400 performers from across the globe already in the evolving GFW talent database. Quote, the reality is we want to build a brand in which fans are watching our wrestlers evolve from day one and are truly invested in the lives of our talent in and out of the ring. Hey, AEW just started a show like that on TV. Anyway, who was on board day one? Like, was there a talent who says, hey, Jeff, saddle up, I'm in?
I got a lot of calls, but I wasn't ready for that. Here's
Right.
something that as I was reading the research and you touched on at the top. Hey Jeff, what were the lessons that you were going to kind of bring forward? I had this conversation last night that relates to this. Time takes time.
Yep.
It just does. And look, we were a Wednesday night. We've gone through that story, but just the building a brand isn't easy, and you got to have financing and you got to have money. And Toby wasn't going to just start writing checks to build a brand. So the It's Coming hashtags, I wanted to make every little thing we did put as much gas and as much noise on it as we possibly could. That quote about wrestling, the boom's coming. Conrad, do you know where kind of I said it, but kind of where I got all that from is so I got it from Hollywood. I got it from whether it was, I mean, multiple people in the television industry said things like, it's time for another boom. You kind of look at the landscape. Reality television, I don't want to say it was dead, but it was stale, the Duck Dynasties of the world and different shows. And so, Idol, just different shows, but wrestling is kind of that thing that's always gone kind of up and then back down and up and back down, but different coats of paint and everything. But there was buzz, if you will, on the wrestling industry. And here's kind of another footnote that you kind of, and I want to make sure I get it right, because it's either February or March, Conrad, a big thing happened in our industry that I said, how do I kind of add fuel to that fire? Because the television industry, at the end of the day, that's what me and Toby were going after. The whole goal of Global Force Wrestling was go get a TV deal, period. Now, I learned a lot along the way, and the climate and where UFC falls into this and the politics at the highest level with ESPN and Fox Sports and Viacom and Turner and even AMC and the political jousting and all that kind of stuff. But the business as a whole, red hot in the 90s, it was just WWE in town. TNA had that run on Viacom. End of the day, we were still on, we weren't on MTV or VH1. We were kind of on the third channel in the Viacom family. Grateful for them, but it wasn't the top of the top. So how do we kind of, how does Jeff and Karen and Sully and the kind of the small nucleus, Brandon Baxter was, and he had a day job, full-time day job, 60 hours a week, being a program director and an AM drive time jock, small group. How do we continue to create noise and kind of, but the Hollywood feedback and everything. And I'm going to get to Dave Broom, but Conrad, is it March of 2014 when the WWE Network launched?
Yes.
Massive news in the entertainment industry. I'm going to shut up. Did you realize in that time, Conrad, hey man, Vince he's always hitting singles and doubles and sometimes triples. This bad boy is a boom. It's and I look, it's gravitated and all that. But in 2014, what were your thoughts on the network coming out?
That it was a mistake to include WrestleMania and SummerSlam and Royal Rumble.
Okay.
Thought it was a home run idea. I thought it made a lot of sense. Cut that pay-per-view provider out. I mean, the reality is when they're charging $30 for a pay-per-view, they're getting $20.
Yeah.
I saw
they're getting 15.
Right. Yeah. My apologies. Here's an opportunity to just keep it all, but I knew that would mean more bottom line expense, but I still felt like your hardcore fans, they're going to pay for that year round, but you're still going to get a guy who doesn't really identify as a hardcore fan. He's not watching Backlash or Money in the Bank or Survivor Series.
Yeah.
But he'll get his buddies together, much like people would who aren't necessarily diehard football fans, and watch the Super Bowl. I know lots of people who don't watch a single NFL game, but then they watch the Super Bowl. And I think WrestleMania is kind of the same way. Like, I don't watch all the preliminary boxing events, but if Floyd Mayweather's fighting or Manny Pacquiao, I'm probably going to buy it.
Yep.
And I think WrestleMania is kind of the same way. And I just thought, man, they're leaving money on the table because the hardcores are going to buy SummerSlam. They're going to buy WrestleMania. They're going to buy Royal Rumble. And I think, boy, this sounds ugly, but the reality is they never met their projections. Not one time. They always said, we'll have this many subscribers. They never got there. And I always thought when George and Michelle were out, it was because of the way that thing was handled, where maybe they were saying one thing and Vince didn't want to hear it and it went the other way and ta-da. But
Interesting.
I think it was necessary and I get it, but I think there should have been maybe tiers to it.
Yeah. Not to go all in on the big four. I hear you, but my point was kind of,
he was taking control. He was not just doing, he was the leader in pay-per-view for a long, long time. And to carve off one of your biggest revenue sources and bet on yourself took a massive set of balls.
And here was I'm the outsider. Look what wrestling is generating monthly. That's how I looked at it. WWE, Raw and SmackDown, and now the network. That pie is big. And
their international at that point was bigger than ever.
And so
which is why you wanted to call it Global Force, right?
Okay. You were going right. All of that is that there's a real opportunity. Because I mean, Kevin K, I don't know if I've ever told you this. He called me, I think it was middle of 2014.
Tell everybody listening to this who Kevin K is. Kevin
K, president of Spike TV.
Okay.
And he heard I left, and Spike was, when did TNA go off Spike? Because it was right kind of in that contract was lapsing. And so and it was a very super casual, hey man, what are you doing? Is Toby involved with you? Oh, he is. Okay. Well, listen, let's stay in touch. You got it, bud. How's your golf game? Great. How are the kids? Great. You spending more time on the East Coast or the West Coast? Oh, I'm more out West Coast right now. You know how I like this sunny weather. All right, pal, I'll chat at you later. But I say all that to say, I think the industry was poised for a new brand. I know they were in 2014. How were they going to figure out how it was going to come to fruition? Dave Broom, John Rich of Big and Rich, personal friend of mine, buddies. He was working with Dave Broom. Dave Broom's, he's got, I don't say claim to fame, but I mean, he's runs 25/7. That's the name of his production company. The Biggest Loser was one of his big shows. Several other shows. He partnered with The Rock on one way back when. Anyway, he's a production company. He reached out to me through John and said, hey man, why don't you come out and let's talk about this? And he said, I'm more interested in kind of creating shoulder programming. I don't know much about creating wrestling content. And I'm like, well, that's what I do. And he goes, well, great. Let's try to kind of figure out what it's going to look like. So that was like a kind of a casual, let's dive into this. And, Dave met Karen and, again, everybody was looking for that next reality kind of hit. But I mean, to create different programming, I always had my eye on, I want to create a next wrestling show. But there was, it's always going to be in kind of a programmer's mindset. How do we create more shoulder programming that can fit a half hour here, a half hour there, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know where you were at with questions, but that's where'd you leave me at questions?
Well, I left you talking about your rock hard ding dong. Thanks to Blue Chew. Everybody knows that Jeff Jarrett's got stroke, not just with fancy country music singers who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, not just with television executives, but with Blue Chew. He wants to get you hard. That's what he's here for. He'll hit you hard with a guitar, or he can put a stiff guitar between your knees. Thanks to our friends at Blue Chew. Maybe you've been living under a rock. Let me explain. Blue Chew is a unique online service. It delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. And the process is simple, y'all. Sign up at BlueChew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. So no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door, all in a discreet package. but there won't be anything discreet about your package. So if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, chew it and do it. Let's have some better sex, y'all. We got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is MyWorld, and you'll receive your very first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast and Jeff's Wiener. Championship winner this Wednesday.
Tag for Mick Foley.
There you go. Hot tag for your wiener.
And Mrs. Foley's little baby boy's baby boy.
How about that? He makes a sound effect with it. Boing. So listen, I said at the top of the show, well, there's some lessons you learned here from the first go around. And of course, we know when you started TNA, man, you and your dad went all in. You put all your personal money in. Eric Bischoff often says that the folks he knew who made the most money in television would hammer into him, you don't use your own money. Was that something you were trying to do here, is use the JArrett family wealth, or were you hoping to involve some other players? And did it go beyond Toby Keith?
Wasn't involving any other players. And that's a good question, Conrad. And here is something that I understand Eric and anybody that, in the television industry. I wasn't getting into the television business solely. I was getting into the promotion business. And I can tell you without question that Richard Scrushy, Bob Carter, and Toby Keith, knowing that I invested my own money, completely changed their mindset on me.
Right.
It just did. That, okay, it's easy to spend my money. And, me and Toby had these conversations. And, look, when we launched TNA in Huntsville, Toby and Mark were buddies back in the day. Mark Miller, who did our music in the beginning. Anyway, they knew that I was gambling with my own money. And so I do think there's validity to Eric's mindset, but I also believe at the very, very end of the day, the very core value of it all is without risk, there's no reward.
Right.
And if you're not willing to risk your own money, why in the hell would another individual like a Toby, like a Bob Carter, like a Richard Scrusy say, oh, you want to spend my money, but not yours?
Right.
No, wait a minute here. So with this being said, I was using, we were using personal money, but I was going to be smart and strategic about that. I mean, as we get into later in Global Force with the AMP tapings in Vegas and the minor league baseball stadium tour and kind of that whole mindset, I didn't sit down and say, I'm going to just start writing checks on that. That was, I'd learned a lot of what I'd learned over the last 10, 15 years on that. But as far as startup minimal expenses, I felt A, I had to, B, I had those conversations with Toby and others in that if I'm going to get this thing lifted off the ground, I got to spend some money. It just isn't magically going to happen. But no, I wasn't going out looking for capital from anybody else. And it was an understanding with Toby that I didn't need to.
It's reported in the Torch that the plan was really a reality show where they follow you along behind the scenes as you're putting together the promotion, and you're doing it from scratch, hiring the wrestlers, creating characters, doing all of this before it became a wrestling show. Was that the general gist of the idea?
Dave Broom was very high on this idea in that in our conversations, man, it was a pretty summer day or spring day, yes, whatever it was. And I'm kind of giving him the background and getting to know each other. And he goes, that's the show. That's the show. And I go, I kind of hear you, but no, reality show gets one rating, but wrestling and I'm ready. I pull out. Sports entertainment gets a number period. Yeah, but he's a TV producer, and so
Right.
wanted to do TV things, and it's gonna get numbers. And I did like the idea of the story, but I told him, Dave, I'm not really interested in doing a reality startup wrestling show if we don't get the pot of gold. He goes, well, we can get there. And I'm like, well, okay. That was where the kind of conversations going on.
Is it him and Sully who were pushing for the webisodes and trying to leverage YouTube?
Two separate things. Me and Sully was personal and just kind of, I'll say, diving off into the wrestling world. Dave Broom and his team, and he wanted to do sizzle reels and do it the Hollywood way. So it wasn't a real lockstep, thing going on. Again, you referenced in there, I never dreamed we'd get 1 million views off of
That clip.
hype videos.
Yeah.
I mean, hype videos on hyping, naming the company. I mean, I think I told you 2 years ago when we were launching My World, hey, Conrad, let's do it off the heels of Mania. Mania week, from the time the event used to be on Sunday, but now I guess on Saturday, but now I think it really starts on Friday on SmackDown. And, you look at now it's Ring of Honor pay-per-view, SmackDown, Hall of Fame, goes into night 1 and the night 2 and then Raw and then Dynamite, just everything. So I'll call it WrestleMania week. When you look at the Google analytics and online analytics out of 52 weeks a year, you wouldn't be amazed, but I think some of our listeners would be amazed that you would go, the traffic is that much bigger. And so that was sometime in March of 2014. I said, let's just name the company the day after Mania. And we did it after the New Orleans show.
It's documented that you have a working relationship with AAA, and we know that fast forward to June, and there's even going to be a commercial during the New Japan Dominion pay-per-view where it shows you and Karen announcing a promotional agreement between New Japan and Global Force. How were these deals coming together? You just had friends in the industry and
just straight. Yeah. No, so I did the Dorian deal because I had worked with him for 10 or 12 years. Scott D'Amore was instrumental in, navigating, or I'll say opening the door for New Japan. At this time, AJ had been there, Doc and Carl, but that relationship was going. But, as we got into it, it was, the understanding was, let's create some buzz. And my whole vision as a startup was, hey guys, right now, Japan was probably at the top of making guys consistent paychecks, but they weren't competitive with WWE salaries. And Mexico certainly wasn't competitive. And I said, let's kind of create a scenario. And, there is it's subjective, maybe in the European countries and maybe in other countries, but AAA, the number 1 in Mexico, New Japan, the number 1 in Japan. Over in the UK, it's a little bit more subjective, but create an alliance, if you will, of just a talent exchange, because talent, at the end of the day, it drives the industry. And so if you have an AJ Styles working, we'll call it the independent route, but he's 20 weeks in Japan and maybe a few weeks here and a few weeks there, he's making a hell of a living and he's really dictating his career. Look at Cardona right now. That's what he's doing. I mean, that's exactly the mindset, and hats off to him. It's a hustle. It's a grind. But at the end of the day, there's no doubt in my mind, Cardona is building equity in Cardona.
yes.
That goes a long way. It really does. It goes a long way. And so again, trying to kind of put that scenario, knowing that at this point, I'm a long way from getting a TV deal. So let's kind of create brand equity and value and buzz. And I knew even in as 14 was kind of rolling to an end that, all right, there's a way to run shows that may not set the woods on fire, but it'll continue to create a little buzz. Again, the building blocks of building a brand, knowing what a challenge it was at TNA, even with a financial partner and doing a pay-per-view deal and all that went with it.
You did interviews at the time and you said something like, we put the word global in this new brand and we meant it. And the Torch would say that you had signed a European Union of Promotions to be a part of the Upstart Wrestling promotion. With the help of former TNA and Ring of Honor star Doug Williams, GFW targeted independent promotions in the UK, Germany, and Ireland. Specifically, aligned promotions include Revolution Pro Wrestling, New Generation Wrestling, Premier British Wrestling, West Side Extreme Wrestling, and Emerald Wrestling promotions. This all happens, of course, in addition to New Japan in Japan, AAA in Mexico. Was part of the thinking here just the economies of scale? There's a whole lot of folks who are working real hard to make a tiny dent. Maybe if we work together, we can make a bigger dent. And maybe I can give some of these folks an opportunity to, if I'm successful, land a television deal, because that would be a new platform to showcase their talent that maybe they wouldn't have had the relationships or inroads that you did. Is that sort of the big vision?
It's definitely part of it. The thing that kind of happened with the European is that Dorian, AAA, obviously, for a long time, and they've had some political situations through the years, they wanted to break into this market. So that relationship was, I don't say simple, but a no-brainer for both of us to put together. The New Japan thing came along at the right time and the right pieces of the puzzle. Then all of a sudden, when that came out, I started getting calls from European promotions, and I'm thinking, okay, there's a way to, do that. And to dovetail back into what you said, getting a TV deal, maybe there is a set of circumstances that it's not 52 weeks. Maybe it is a 13-week season, and you take 3 months off and have another 13-week season. The different programming model. And that's something that, when I started having those conversations with Dave Broom, and then later the following year, when me and Arthur Smith really put our brains together and came to an agreement, and we spent money and scissor reels and pitch meetings and callbacks and the Fox Holding deal and all that kind of stuff, it wasn't walking in the door saying, we want 52 weeks a year. We'll start with 1 hour, but we want 2 hours. It was, hey, let's do something different. Let's create a programming model that fits for not just for us in the wrestling world, but also in the television world. And so would it have been something that would have been very attractive to a New Japan to, be featured prominently, in a US deal, or a AAA in a US deal, something along those lines, that, okay, there is a real upside to partnering with Global Force.
You also reveal, and there's photos out there, I believe, and certainly you were talking about meeting with potential television partners in New York City. Is that just to get some buzz in the investment world, or did you think there was real opportunity there?
Having fun. Dave Broom, we didn't think he would really. Are you talking about the pictures with Dave? I think you are at this time frame. Yeah. It was just having fun, buzz. Dave knows everybody in the industry, and he's have fun with it.
You and I've taken photos like that before.
Exactly. Just, it's just having fun.
Yeah. Listen, there's discussion, and I don't know where you are on this. This is from the Torch. The latest date JArrett has tossed out for those working with him is to keep their calendar clear starting in January 2015. Now, remember, this was announced first week of April 2014. There's believed to be some sort of non-compete clause with JArrett regarding Spike TV as part of his departure settlement with TNA. If it's only through the end of 2014, that would be a small gap of time Spike TV would be without pro wrestling in prime time. It might be a clean break in the sense of giving a fresh start feel to GFW. GFW, though, could also land on CMT or another cable network, especially with Toby Keith's reported involvement in collecting funding and being a face of the brand. If Spike felt more comfortable with JArrett than Dixie Carter as a partner in their wrestling company, that could be enough to get Spike to switch to GFW. There's confidence within Spike that the 1.1 to 1.4 million weekly audience could be regained with another wrestling brand. Ironically, it's TNA stripping its roster of most of its big name talent, with Jeff Hardy switching to Willow, Kurt Angle missing substantial time, and the departures of most of the other former WWE single stars, and still drawing solid viewership above 1 million, has done nothing but add to that feeling. If the non-compete runs longer than just the end of this year, GFW is probably a non-factor in the situation. So let's talk about that. Did you think, since you talked to Kevin K, there might be an opportunity when this deal is up? Did you have a non-compete to talk to Spike? And I bring all of this up because, as a reminder to everyone listening, even though Jeff resigned his position, which means a salaried position, it doesn't mean Jeff just forfeited his shares. He's still an owner of TNA. Talk to me about the non-compete that's rumored or speculated about. Was that real?
No, total speculation. All that. The reality was Toby. I mean, this is you had to we had to do our best. We were just very careful. That's why 2014, I don't want to say regret. I never really thought we would get that kind of buzz. I'm going to say that. I didn't think we create that kind of expectation, because 2014 wasn't meant to. I never in my wildest dreams says, "Hey man, I'm leaving TNA into 2013. By mid 2014, we'll be up and running." That what was it anywhere in the cards? But there was a lot of buzz and chatter, and then the New Japan and the AAA created a few more expectations, but there was never any non-compete. And Kevin K and myself had a catch-up conversation, I think really just kicking the tires. But at the end of the day, if we were going to get in the Viacom family, I truly believe it was going to be on CMT due to Toby and due to kind of their programming model. They had kind of, all right, they're going to go all, a network gets these mindsets. We're going to go all male. We're going to go all female. We're going to go male and female. We're going to, Spike for men and this and that. Also think I had the mindset is wrestling on Spike. They're not going to go from one brand to the next. I just didn't think they were. I think if anything, there was going to be at least a real pause. And I had heard through an agent who called me and said, "Do you know who would be sniffing around Spike trying to get TNA's time slot?" And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Supposedly there's a group, Conrad," and I to this day don't even know who they're talking about, but supposedly some former wrestling executives were trying to get, quote unquote, the TNA time slot. And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm in the industry, and to my knowledge, but that doesn't mean nothing. I don't know who it could be, but no, there was no non-compete, Conrad.
Talk to me about the NWA. When you first started TNA, you leaned on the NWA and called it NWA TNA. You like the legacy, you like the heritage. And most people remember that the NWA was a governing body that represented a collection of these different promotions. And we just rattled off a whole host of promotions you were hoping to work with. At the time, the NWA was owned by different folks than it is now. It felt like it was attainable. Did that even cross your mind in this era? Or was it fool me once, fool me twice sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, the NWA model wasn't even, it was, no, I didn't have any wishes or thoughts. And are you talking about actually working with the NWA or just kind of the alliance of the mindset?
Buying it. Because the NWA was bought and sold a few times.
No.
It wasn't a substantial amount.
Zero answers. I mean, as far as the branding, I want to do everything new. And Toby did too.
I got you.
Brand new. I mean, that's where he had actually said, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, because he wasn't even sure, due to the TNA Impact Wrestling misbrand, he wasn't even sure, do we move forward with that? Do we rebrand the company with, not call it Toby Keith Wrestling, but does he put money behind a complete rebrand? All that was going to be up in the air.
You also announced that Hermie Sadler is on your board of directors. Is that simply because he's got the celebrity name and some influence in that circle? Did you think it could lead to a NASCAR crossover, or what's the thinking? And I mean, I know Hermie's your longtime friend. I'm just wondering, was he interested in being in the wrestling business, or you just knew my man's a businessman? He can help me make business decisions.
Bingo. That, and the news of a Sadler being a part of it.
More
NASCAR,
buzz.
and NASCAR's big boy business in so many ways, and Hermie knows everybody in that industry: drivers, team owners, track owners, brands, you name it. And one of my best friends for a long, long time, but his business acumen at the very top.
Listen, I want to put a button on this when I realize we've gone 2 hours, but I've had so much fun talking about it. I want to keep talking about GFW, but we will pause for now. But before we do, you always say, no, you can ask me anything. I'm an open book. Well, we got a question that I probably should wait and ask on part 2 if we ever do enough. I know we're going to do a pickup from here. The name of this episode, of course, is just Starting Global Force. We'll come back and
Conrad, do you know what we haven't even covered? The Grand Slam Tour, the Minor League Tour,
right?
AMP tapings.
Yep.
New Japan, Bullet Club, JR Fight. That was really Global Force's first branded event that we took the Wrestle Kingdom 9, which you watched, and produced it. I'll call it through the Global Force tentacles. JR, there is so much we hadn't even got into.
We'll get into that, but
That's
there's
right.
one question.
Okay. Oh, okay. We're going after. Okay, here we go.
I shouldn't ask this,
but you're going to.
You can tell me I can't answer that, and it's fine because you might not be able to.
Oh boy!
But Instagram, a wrestling historian, writes, internet reports say the master tapes of GFW footage was deleted. Can you confirm or debunk? Thanks in advance. Should we wait and answer that on part 2, or you ever be able to give the answer to that?
That's a part 2.
That sounded like a part 2. We might need to talk to some lawyers before we answer. By the way, folks, we got a lot more meat on the bone here. We will talk about the Bullet Club. We will talk about Scott D'Amore. We will talk about Dixie Carter. We will talk about the Tokyo Dome show, and eventually TNA again. We're just out of time today. Next week, we'll be back talking about Lockdown 2008, a pretty epic match of Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle and the 6 Sides of Steel. Lethal Lockdown between Team Cage and Team Tomko. Cuffed in the Cage, Queen of the Cage, escape matches, and so much more. You get all of this early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. And Jeff, before I sat down to record with you today, Evan and I spent a lot of time working on Top Guy Weekend. Wow. It is going to be something else. By the way, I want you to try Top Guy Weekend. I want you to try ad-free shows. You know what? I want you to try adfreeshows.com on me for free. So cruise over. Get yourself a free trial right now at adfreeshows.com. You'll see lots of great stuff over there that you've never seen or heard before, including a little series we call Conversations with Conrad. I sat down with Jeff's dad, Mr. JArrett. I did it with Jim Hurd and Jim Crockett Jr., all available now at adfreeshows.com. I want to mention, if your business targets men 25 to 54 years old, buddy, there's no better place to advertise than right here on My World. You've heard us do some of the same ads for the same companies year after year after year. You know why? Because it really works. And with our super targeted audience, there's very little waste. Go to advertisewithjarrett.com now. That's advertisewithjarrett.com now and find out more about how to advertise here on the program. Jeff, I don't know what I expected today, but I had a blast. I love talking about starting a company in the business of the wrestling business. Can't wait for us to pick this conversation up. In the meantime, I'm going to be sporting a new shirt from boxofgimmicks.com, and you should too, because our man, your friend and mine, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, the Last Outlaw, tomorrow night in Long Island, is going to dethrone MJF. He's walking out with the 28 pounds of gold. It's going to be a big day.
Conrad, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Serious. If you sign up and become a Top Guy right now, can you come to the weekend, or have they missed the window?
They've missed the window, but you don't want to miss it for next year.
I was going to say is, folks, it's when you hear the details, you're going to go, oh man.
Our surprise the first year, this is real. We had a lot of surprises.
Yeah.
but amongst them was FTR, Sting, Jerry Lawler, Scott D'Amore. It was amazing.
Yep.
Our surprises the second year, JArrett, David Crockett, Tony Khan stopped by, Ric Flair, Road Dogg. I mean, it was such a fun time. This year, I can't spill the beans.
Oh boy.
But I will say, when I brought it up in the room today and I said, what about so-and-so? Immediately, all eyes turned to me. Can you get him? Yeah. And then a little later, I said, hey, what about so-and-so? Are you friends with, do you have his number? Yeah. It's going to be special. Top Guy Weekend coming your way sooner rather than later. Be a part of what we're doing. We've built a fun little community. I think you'll dig it. Lots of content, video, audio, interactive. It's all at adfreeshows.com. Jeff, I had a great time today. I hope you didn't get in too much trouble when I sort of spilled the beans. Probably need to have Marcus bleep some of that out. And we'll see you guys next week right here on My World.
Peace.
As an adult, don't we all miss spring break? Nothing like taking a week off from all your responsibilities. Well, here's the next best thing for adults, a spring break from house payments. SaveWithConrad.com can help you get rid of all your credit card debt, just like that. We're routinely helping our listeners save $500, $600, $700, even $800 a month. And you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this, but check this out. No house payments for 2 months at SaveWithConrad.com.